I realized my only child might be planning my death. It started with a simple cup of Earl Grey. Jason, my son, had brewed it just like he always did, smiling, fussing over me, calling me Mom, like it still meant something. But the taste was wrong, bitter, metallic. And just that morning, by pure accident, I'd opened a letter addressed to him, a life insurance policy, on my life, for $1.2 million, with Jason as the only beneficiary, and I hadn't signed a single thing. That's when the pattern clicked. Him hovering more lately, commenting on my health, organizing my medications, always offering me his special teas. My hands trembled, but I kept smiling, because what he didn't know, what he never counted on, was that I'd found a policy before the contestability clause ran out. I had 59 days to act, to survive, and to make sure the truth didn't just come out, but blew up in his face. But before we begin, dear, comment under this video where in the world you're watching from today. Now let's start from the beginning. I remember how the afternoon light streamed through my kitchen window that Tuesday, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Funny how you notice the smallest details when your world is about to shatter. I was 70 years old, a retired teacher, a widow for nearly 15 years, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about my only son. How terribly wrong I was. Mom, you're looking a little tired today, Jason said, his voice warm with concern as he moved around my kitchen with the familiarity of someone who'd grown up there. Why don't I make us some tea? I smiled, settling into my chair at the kitchen table. That would be lovely, dear. My bones ached a bit that day, nothing unusual for a woman my age, but Jason had been commenting on my health more frequently lately, always noticing if I coughed, always asking if I was sleeping well, eating enough. Such a dutiful son. That's what I thought anyway. Earl Grey, right? He reached for the tin in the cupboard, the one he'd given me for Christmas. Your favorite. You know me so well, I said, watching as he filled the kettle. My mind drifted to earlier that morning. I hadn't meant to open Jason's mail. I'd never been the type of mother to pry. The envelope had been mixed in with my bills, addressed to my home, though Jason had his own place across town. Simple mistake. I'd sliced it open before noticing his name. But once it was open, well, what I saw made my heart stutter. A life insurance policy confirmation for $1.2 million. On my life, I was listed as the insured. Jason, the sole beneficiary. The policy had apparently been in effect for 3 months already. 3 months of my son coming over more frequently, bringing me special teas, checking on my health, offering to handle my medications. Here we go. Jason placed a steaming cup in front of me, his smile reaching his eyes. He'd always had a charming smile, his father's smile. Careful, it's hot. Thank you, sweetheart. My voice sounded normal somehow, though my insides were twisted into knots. How could I sit there, acting as if everything was fine, when that document was burning a hole through my thoughts? I never signed any life insurance papers, never authorized anything of the sort. Jason took the seat across from me, his own cup cradled between his hands. So I was thinking about the cottage up at the lake. Remember how Dad always talked about renovating it? I nodded, only half listening as I lifted the cup to my lips. The familiar bergamot scent wafted up, comforting and normal. But when the liquid touched my tongue, something was wrong. Beneath the citrusy flavor of the Earl Grey lurked something else. Metallic, bitter, It clung to the back of my throat, my heart hammered against my ribs. Was I imagining things? Being paranoid because of what I'd found? Mom? Jason leaned forward, eyes filled with concern. Are you okay? You look pale. I forced a smile. Just a bit warm in here, that's all. His gaze was so intense, so expectant, watching me, waiting for something. Drink your tea before it gets cold, he urged gently. It'll make you feel better. Would it? Or would it make me feel nothing ever again? Memories flooded back. Jason's gambling debts in his 20s that I'd paid off with my teacher's pension. The failed real estate ventures I'd reluctantly invested in. His recent questions about my will, about my savings. The way he'd insisted on organizing my medicine cabinet last month. My son, my only child. The little boy I'd read bedtime stories to, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd dried when his father passed. Could he really be? Actually, I said, setting the cup down with a steady hand that surprised even me, I'm feeling a bit queasy. Must be something I ate earlier. Oh no. His brow furrowed with worry. Maybe you should lie down. I can bring the tea to your bedroom. No, I said quickly. Too quickly. I think I just need to use the bathroom. Excuse me for a moment. I rose from the table, moving with deliberate calm toward the hallway. Once inside the bathroom, I closed the door and leaned against it, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. This couldn't be happening. There had to be an explanation. Maybe the policy was some kind of investment strategy. Maybe the tea just tasted off because the leaves were old. Maybe I was losing my mind. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me had raised a son alone, had shaped young minds for 40 years in the classroom, had weathered widowhood with quiet dignity. She was not a woman who jumped to terrible conclusions without evidence. I needed to think clearly, to be certain. When I returned to the kitchen, Jason was texting someone, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his phone screen. He quickly set it down when he saw me. Feeling any better? He asked. A little, I lied. But I think I should skip the tea today. My stomach's still not right. Was that disappointment that flashed across his face, or just my imagination running wild? I'll pour it out, I said, reaching for my cup. No, I can do that. Jason stood quickly, his chair scraping against the tile floor. You should sit down. But I was already at the sink, tipping the contents of my cup down the drain. As the liquid swirled away, something caught my eye. At the bottom of the white ceramic cup, clinging to the sides, was a faint greenish residue. Something that shouldn't have been there, something that wasn't tea. My blood turned to ice in my veins. Mom? Jason was beside me now, one hand on my shoulder. Everything okay? I turned to face my son, my only child, my flesh and blood, and smiled. Yes, dear, everything's fine, just tired, that's all. But nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. Because in that moment, looking into the concerned eyes of the boy I'd raised, I knew with devastating certainty my son was trying to kill me. That night I couldn't sleep. My bedroom, usually a sanctuary of comfort with its faded floral wallpaper and the soft quilt I'd made when Jason was born, felt like a trap. Every creak of the old house made me flinch. Was that Jason in the hallway? Was he waiting for me to fall asleep so he could? I shuddered and pulled the covers tighter around me. You're being ridiculous, I whispered to myself. Your own son wouldn't, but the image of that greenish residue in my teacup wouldn't leave me, nor would the memory of that life insurance policy with my name on it, a policy I'd never signed for. In the darkness, I found myself reaching for Robert's side of the bed, my fingers finding only cool, empty sheets. My dear, practical Robert, gone 12 years now. How I missed his steady presence, his calm reasoning. He's got your charm, Ellie, Robert had said about Jason once, but not your heart. I'd scolded him for being too hard on our boy. He's just finding his way, I'd insisted. But Robert had seen something in Jason that I'd been too blind to acknowledge. Watch how he uses that smile, Robert had warned me not long before the heart attack took him. He turns it on and off like a faucet, only when he wants something. I dismissed it as fatherly jealousy, maybe even a bit of resentment that our son had inherited my social ease rather than Robert's reserved nature. But now, in the hollow silence of night, those warnings echoed with terrible clarity. How many times had Jason charmed his way out of trouble? How many times had he smiled that winning smile, called me the best mom in the world, right before asking for money to cover yet another temporary setback? I slipped out of bed and padded to my closet, where I'd hidden the insurance policy beneath a stack of old photo albums. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, carrying it to the window where moonlight spilled across the pages. That's when I saw it, a detail I'd missed earlier in my shock. The policy had a 90-day contestability period. It had been issued 31 days ago. My breath caught in my throat. Insurance companies investigate deaths that occur during this period much more thoroughly. After 90 days, the policy becomes nearly incontestable, even in cases of fraud. Jason had 59 days left, 59 days before his plan became almost foolproof. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. This was calculated, planned. My son had marked my life with an expiration date. I slid down against the wall, clutching the policy to my chest, and did something I hadn't done since Robert's funeral. I wept, not just for the betrayal, but for the little boy I'd lost long ago, without even realizing it. When dawn finally broke, I must have dozed off, because I woke with a start, still sitting on the floor with the policy in my lap. My neck ached, and my head felt heavy, foggy. Had I really slept that poorly, or... A chill ran through me. Had Jason put something in my dinner, too? I struggled to my feet, swaying slightly. The room tilted around me. This wasn't normal morning stiffness. My thoughts came sluggishly, as if wading through molasses. "Get it together, Eleanor," I muttered, using both hands to steady myself against the dresser. I needed to call someone. My doctor, the police, my friend Margaret, anyone. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand. It wasn't there. Panic surged through my veins, momentarily clearing the fog. I always kept my phone by my bed. Always. I checked the dresser, my purse, even under the bed. Nothing. The house was quiet, too quiet. Was Jason still here? I needed to find my phone before he... "Morning, Mom." Jason's voice startled me as he appeared in my doorway, bright and chipper. "I made coffee. How'd you sleep?" "Fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Jason, have you seen my phone? I can't find it anywhere." Something flickered behind his eyes, so quick I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching for it. "Oh, your phone. I'm updating it for you." "Updating it?" I echoed. "Yeah, the operating system was way out of date. Makes it vulnerable to hackers." He leaned against the doorframe, casual as could be. Don't worry. I'll have it back to you by tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning tops. My throat went dry. I'd like it back now, please. I need to call Margaret about our lunch plans. Jason's smile never wavered. No problem, I'll call her for you. What time were you meeting? We hadn't made any plans. I was testing him. That's okay, I said, matching his casual tone. I can wait until you're done with the updates. Great. Hey, you look a little unsteady. Why don't you go back to bed for a bit? I'll bring you some toast and tea. Tea. The very thought made my stomach lurch. No tea, I said quickly. Just toast is fine, and maybe some water. He nodded, his eyes studying me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Whatever you need, Mom. I'm here to take care of you. That's what terrified me most. After he left, I sank onto the edge of the bed. The house I'd lived in for 40 years had become a prison. No phone, no way to call for help. And even if I could, what would I say? That my son was trying to poison me? That he'd taken out a life insurance policy in my name? Without proof, who would believe me? I needed allies. I needed evidence. Most of all, I needed time. 59 days. The clock was ticking. I waited until Jason left for his investment meeting the next day before making my move. He'd been hovering like a helicopter, always within earshot, always checking on me with that plastic smile that never quite reached his eyes. I'd played along, acting weaker than I felt, letting him think his plan was working. I'm going to pick up a few things at the market, I told him before he left. Just some yarn for my knitting. Mom, I can get that for you later, he'd insisted, brow furrowed with what looked like concern. Once I would have believed it. You shouldn't be out alone. You've been so unsteady lately. Yes, I wonder why that is, I thought bitterly. I need the fresh air, I said firmly. The bus stop is just at the corner. I've been taking that same route for 30 years. He hesitated, then checked his watch. I really can't miss this meeting. Promise you'll call me if you feel dizzy. Of course, I lied, knowing full well he still had my phone. The moment his car pulled away, I grabbed my purse and the folded insurance policy. The bus arrived right on schedule, and I found myself breathing easier the farther we got from my house. How strange that the home Robert and I had built together, where we'd raised Jason, now felt like a trap closing around me. 20 minutes later, I stepped off at Mapleview Street. Arlene's Pawn and Jewelry sat wedged between a laundromat and a Vietnamese restaurant, its windows covered with metal grating. Not the prettiest place, but Arlene wasn't one for appearances. The bell jingled as I pushed open the door. Behind the counter, Arlene was examining a watch through a jeweler's loupe. She glanced up, her sharp eyes narrowing when she saw me. Well, look what the cat dragged in, she said, but her gruff tone couldn't hide the concern that flashed across her face. You look like hell, Eleanor. That was Arlene, Robert's cousin, and the most direct person I'd ever known. No sugarcoating, no pleasantries, just brutal honesty wrapped in a 5'2" frame with salt and pepper hair cropped close to her scalp. I need help, I said, my voice cracking on the last word. Arlene set down her tools and came around the counter. Sit before you fall down, she ordered, guiding me to a stool. What's going on? And don't tell me nothing. I was a nurse for 30 years. I know something when I see it. The words tumbled out then, the insurance policy, the bitter tea, my missing phone, the dizziness, the fog. With trembling hands, I showed her the paperwork. Arlene read it carefully, her expression hardening with each line. "That little weasel," she muttered. "I always knew there was something off about him. Robert saw it too." "Robert?" I echoed, surprised. "Why do you think he left his tools to me instead of Jason? Said the boy would just pawn them for gambling money." She shook her head. "Should have spoken up sooner, but who wants to tell a mother her son's rotten?" Tears welled in my eyes. "I don't understand how this happened. Where did I go wrong with him?" "Stop that right now," Arlene said sharply. "Some people are just born with a hole where their conscience should be. Not your fault. But we need to figure out what he's putting in your tea." She disappeared into the back room and returned with a small plastic strip sealed in packaging. "Toxicology test strip," she explained. "Use them all the time in hospice when we suspected medication tampering. Swirl it in your next tea. If it changes color, we've got proof he's drugging you." "And then what?" I asked, clutching the strip like a lifeline. "Then we nail the bastard," she said simply. "But first things first. You got somewhere safe to stay?" I shook my head. "He'd find me, and I don't have my phone." Arlene frowned, then pulled an old flip phone from her desk drawer. "Burner phone, emergencies only. My number's programmed in. Call me the second that strip changes color, day or night." I slipped both the phone and the test strip into my purse. "Thank you, Arlene." "Don't thank me yet," she replied grimly. "Just be careful. And Eleanor, don't let him see you're onto him. Men like Jason get dangerous when cornered." That evening, Jason returned with takeout and a suspiciously cheerful demeanor. "How was your shopping trip?" he asked, unpacking containers of Chinese food. "Fine," I said, trying to match his casual tone. "Just picked up some yarn." "No bags," he noted, eyes flicking to my empty hands. My heart skipped. I'd forgotten to actually buy yarn. "They were out of the color I wanted," I improvised. "Thought I'd try again next week." He nodded, but I could feel his suspicion like a physical thing between us. "You look tired, Mom. How about some tea after dinner? Chamomile might help you sleep." There it was, the opportunity I'd been waiting for. "That sounds lovely," I said. After dinner, he busied himself in the kitchen while I sat at the dining table, fingers nervously tracing patterns on the wood. When he returned with a steaming mug, I forced a grateful smile. "Here you go. Drink it while it's hot." "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, the endearment tasting like ash in my mouth. He settled across from me, watching expectantly. I raised the mug to my lips and pretended to sip, letting the steam warm my face without letting any liquid touch my mouth. Perfect," I murmured. Jason smiled, satisfied, and turned his attention to his phone. I waited until he was absorbed before palming the test strip from my pocket. When he glanced up, I quickly asked about his meeting, distracting him while I dipped the strip into the tea under the table. We made small talk for 10 excruciating minutes. Finally, he stood. "I'm going to take a shower. You finish your tea and get some rest, okay?" The moment I heard the bathroom door close and the shower start, I pulled out the test strip. It had turned pitch black. My hand shook as I stared at the damning evidence. With fumbling fingers, I pulled out the burner phone and dialed Arlene. "It's black," I whispered when she answered. The strip turned completely black. Arlene's sharp intake of breath sent ice through my veins. "Barbiturates," she said, her voice cold and clinical. "That's what they use for euthanasia in hospice care. Eleanor, listen to me carefully. Don't drink anything else he gives you. Not one drop. He's not just trying to sedate you anymore. He's trying to kill you. I hung up the phone, my entire body trembling. My own son was trying to kill me. The thought was so monstrous, so beyond comprehension, that my mind kept trying to reject it. But the evidence was right there in my hand, that little black strip that had revealed the awful truth. The shower was still running. I dumped the poisoned tea down the sink, rinsed the mug thoroughly, and returned to my chair just as the water shut off. I needed to think clearly, but panic kept clouding my thoughts. How long had this been going on? The groggy mornings, the unexplained bruises, the missed appointments I couldn't remember making, all of it suddenly made terrible sense. When Jason emerged in his bathrobe, I was sitting exactly where he'd left me, an empty mug in front of me. "Finished your tea?" "Good," he said, smiling that perfect smile that used to make me so proud. Now it just made my skin crawl. "You should sleep well tonight." "I'm already feeling a bit drowsy," I lied, letting my eyelids droop. "Think I'll turn in early." "Need help getting to bed, Mom?" His concern sounded so genuine that for a split second I almost doubted myself. No, I can manage." I pushed myself up from the chair, deliberately making my movements slower and more uncertain than they actually were. "Good night, Jason." "Good night, Mom. Love you." The words hung in the air like poison. Over the next few days, I became an actress worthy of an Academy Award. I accepted every cup of tea with a grateful smile, waiting for Jason to leave the room before pouring it into potted plants or down the sink. I stumbled when walking, slurred my words occasionally, and complained about feeling fuzzy. Jason's eyes would light up with a mixture of concern and something else, something predatory that made me sick to my stomach. "Maybe we should see a doctor," he suggested on the third day, voice dripping with false worry. "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing." I waved him off. "Probably just need more rest." But while I played the role of declining mother, I was watching him like a hawk. I noticed how he checked my cup after I'd finished my tea, how he documented something in his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, how he made calls from his car instead of the house. I needed proof, something concrete I could take to the police, and I needed to know exactly what he was planning. My opportunity came when Jason announced he had a meeting with a client that would take most of the afternoon. The moment his car disappeared down the street, I sprang into action. His bedroom door was unlocked. Why bother locking it when your victim is supposedly too drugged to investigate? I started with the obvious places: dresser drawers, bedside table, closet shelves, nothing unusual. Then I checked under the mattress, nothing there either. I was about to give up when I noticed his laptop bag in the corner. Next to it was a small fireproof lockbox, the kind people keep important documents in. My heart pounded as I tried the lid. Locked, of course. What would Jason use as a combination? I tried his birthday. Nothing. My birthday, number, his father's death date, still locked. Then I remembered Jason had always been superstitious about the number 427. April 27th was the date he'd won big at a casino years ago, and he considered it his lucky number. 4-2-7. The box clicked open. Inside, neatly organized in color-coded folders, was the evidence of my son's betrayal. The first folder contained copies of the life insurance policy I'd already discovered, but now I could see my signature on multiple documents. Signatures I'd never made. The forgeries were good, but I knew my own handwriting. The second folder held what appeared to be other insurance policies, a critical illness policy, an accidental death policy, all with inflated payouts, and all with Jason as the sole beneficiary. My hand shook as I opened the third folder. Inside was a small spiral-bound notebook labeled simply Mom's Meds and Reactions. I flipped it open and felt bile rise in my throat. In Jason's precise handwriting were detailed notes. Day 1, 5 milligrams in morning tea. Slight drowsiness after 30 minutes. No other effects. Day 4, increased to 10 milligrams. Confusion noted approximately 45 minutes after ingestion. Slurred speech, good progress. Day 7, 15 milligrams, extended sleep, 14 plus hours. Difficulty walking upon waking, perfect. The entries continued, documenting my supposed deterioration like a science experiment. The most recent entry from just 2 days ago read, 20 milligrams not producing desired acceleration. Considering alternative approaches. Time running short. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the notebook to shreds. Instead, I took pictures of every page with the burner phone Arlene had given me. The final folder was the thinnest, but somehow the most terrifying. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an appointment confirmation from something called Riverside Wellness Assessment Center for 3 weeks from now. My name was on it, along with a notation, Cognitive Evaluation for Elder Care Placement. My blood ran cold. Jason wasn't just trying to poison me slowly, he was setting up a backup plan. If the poison didn't work fast enough, he intended to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized. Once I was locked away in some facility, he could finish what he'd started without anyone asking questions. I photographed this document too, then carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. I closed the lockbox, reset the combination, and put it back in its original position. Back in my room, I sank onto my bed, overwhelmed by the scope of Jason's betrayal. This wasn't some impulsive act of desperation. This was calculated, meticulous planning to end my life and profit from my death. My own child had been documenting my fake symptoms, forging my signature, and plotting my demise, all while smiling and serving me poisoned tea. 3 weeks. That's all I had before he'd try to have me committed. The insurance policy's contestability period would end in less than 2 months. The clock was ticking on both fronts. I clutched the burner phone, staring at the damning evidence I'd collected. I needed to get these to Arlene. I needed a plan. Because one thing was crystal clear. I was in a fight for my life against the person I'd once given life to. I slipped away to the public library the next morning, telling Jason I needed to return a book. He offered to drive me, of course, my concerned son always hovering. I declined, insisting the fresh air would do me good. The flash of irritation that crossed his face disappeared so quickly I might have imagined it. "Just be careful, Mom," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "You've been so unsteady lately." I've never been more steady in my life, I thought, but nodded meekly. At the library, I settled at a computer in the far corner and searched for Riverside Wellness Assessment Center. The website looked professional enough, soft blues and greens, smiling elderly people, promises of compassionate evaluations, but something felt off. The address was in an industrial area I knew well. George used to work near there. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find a medical facility. I dug deeper, searching for the doctor listed on the appointment form, Dr. Malcolm Reeves. The results made my stomach drop. 2 years ago, the state medical board had revoked his license for gross negligence and unprofessional conduct. 3 separate families had filed complaints about his hasty dementia diagnoses and aggressive recommendations for institutional care. My hands trembled as I read an article from the local paper. Families claimed doctor pushed unnecessary institutionalization. One quote stood out. "My mother went in for a routine evaluation and came out heavily sedated with papers signing away her independence," said Eleanor Jenkins, daughter of one victim. "We later discovered, Doctor, Reeves had arrangements with certain facilities, kickbacks for referrals." This wasn't a legitimate medical appointment. This was the endgame of Jason's plan. Get me declared incompetent by a crooked doctor, lock me away somewhere, and then, what? Continue poisoning me where nobody would question an elderly woman's death? I printed everything I found, folded the papers carefully, and tucked them into my purse. The walk home felt longer than usual, my mind racing with each step. I needed to confront Jason, but carefully. I couldn't let him know what I'd discovered. When I returned, Jason was in the kitchen making lunch, a sandwich and, predictably, a cup of tea. "Perfect timing, Mom," he called cheerfully. "I was just about to bring this up to your room." I set my purse down on the counter, making sure the papers were hidden. "Jason," I said, keeping my voice casual, "I was thinking about that appointment you mentioned, the wellness check." His hands paused briefly as he poured hot water into the mug. "What about it?" "I'm just a little nervous," I said, letting vulnerability seep into my voice. "What exactly are they checking for? It seems so formal." Jason turned to me, his expression a perfect mask of concern. "It's just routine, Mom. Given how forgetful you've been lately, I thought it would be good to get a professional opinion." "Forgetful," I echoed, as if confused. "You know, the misplaced keys, the confusion in the mornings, how you sometimes can't remember what day it is." He set the tea in front of me with a gentle smile. "I'm worried about you." Every single symptom he described was a direct result of the drugs he'd been slipping me. I stared at the steaming mug, fighting the urge to throw it in his face. "But why this specific clinic?" I pressed. "I've never heard of it." Something flickered in Jason's eyes, annoyance perhaps, or worry that I was asking too many questions. Then his face crumpled, and to my shock, tears welled in his eyes. "I'm scared, Mom," he whispered, voice breaking. "Dad was the same way before the end. The forgetfulness, the confusion. I couldn't bear to lose you the same way." I watched my son cry, the tears streaming down his cheeks, and felt a moment of terrible doubt. Could I be wrong? Could this all be a horrible misunderstanding? "Everything I've done," he continued, reaching for my hand, "has been for your security. The insurance, the appointment, it's all to make sure you're taken care of." His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and familiar. For one heartbreaking second, I wanted to believe him. This was my little boy, the child I'd nursed through fevers and nightmares. How could he want me dead? But then I remembered the notebook. Day 7, 15 milligrams. Extended sleep, 14 plus hours. Difficulty walking upon waking, perfect. "I understand," I said softly, squeezing his hand. "Thank you for looking out for me." That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my room, replaying our conversation. Jason's tears had seemed so genuine. Was I becoming paranoid? Was I the one losing my grip on reality? Around midnight, I heard movement in the hallway. Jason's door opened and closed. I waited a few minutes, then crept out of my room. His door was slightly ajar, a thin strip of light visible. I could hear him on the phone, voice low but urgent. Needs to be done before she starts asking more questions. No, I can't wait that long. I don't care what it costs. When the call ended, I heard a sound I recognized immediately, the mechanical whir of a paper shredder. I held my breath, waiting until I heard his bathroom door close and the shower start, before I slipped into his room. The shredder beside his desk was still warm. Next to it, his wastebasket was filled with thin strips of paper. I knelt down, my knees protesting, and began sifting through the fragments. Most were unidentifiable, but some larger pieces remained intact. I pulled them out one by one, laying them on the carpet like puzzle pieces. My heart pounded as I recognized the letterhead of Bayview Life Insurance. Another fragment showed part of my forged signature. A third contained the words, "contestability period." Jason was destroying the evidence. The confrontation had spooked him. My questions about the clinic must have made him realize I was becoming suspicious. I gathered a handful of the shredded documents, stuffing them into the pocket of my robe. I needed to show these to Arlene. I needed proof. As I carefully backed out of the room, I caught sight of Jason's laptop, still open on his desk. The screen showed his email and a message with the subject line, "Expedited evaluation request, Riverside Wellness." Time was running out faster than I'd thought. I woke the next morning with a plan forming. The shredded insurance papers and Jason's suspicious phone call had erased any lingering doubts. My son, my only child, was systematically poisoning me. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed concrete proof that would stand up to scrutiny. What I needed was evidence no one could dismiss. I shuffled into the kitchen where Jason was making breakfast, deliberately bumping into the counter corner. "Mom, are you okay?" He rushed over, concern painted perfectly across his face. I'm fine, I mumbled, rubbing my hip. "Just, what day is it again, dear?" Something gleamed in Jason's eyes, satisfaction perhaps. "It's Wednesday, Mom. Remember? We talked about this yesterday." "Did we?" I blinked owlishly at him. "I thought yesterday was Monday." He sighed, that practiced sound of patient worry. "This is exactly why I scheduled that appointment. You're getting more confused." I nodded meekly, lowering myself into a chair. "You're probably right. Things seem foggy lately." "That's normal at your age," he said, patting my shoulder. "Nothing to worry about. I'll take care of everything." I bet you will, I thought, but kept my face blank and grateful. Over the next 3 days, I leaned hard into my performance. I called Jason by his father's name twice. I put the milk in the cupboard instead of the refrigerator. I told the same story about my childhood dog 3 times in one afternoon, each time acting surprised when Jason pointed it out. "I'm sorry," I'd say, eyes wide with manufactured confusion. "Did I already tell you that?" Each incident seemed to relax Jason further. His shoulders loosened, his smile came more easily. He began leaving his bedroom door open at night, no longer worried about my midnight wanderings. Why would he be? I was just a confused old woman slipping away right on schedule. By the 4th day, he resumed our tea ritual with renewed confidence. "Here you go, Mom. Earl Grey, just how you like it." I watched his hands as he set the mug before me, wondering what invisible poison swirled within. How many doses before my confusion would become permanent? How many before my heart would simply stop? "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, wrapping my fingers around the warm ceramic. "You're always so thoughtful." That night, after Jason had gone to bed, I crept down to the basement and dug through a box of old electronics. My late husband had been something of a gadget enthusiast, always buying the newest cameras and devices. Most were outdated now, but I found what I needed: a small wireless camera, barely larger than a matchbox. I tested it with trembling fingers, relieved when the indicator light blinked green. The battery still worked, and according to the manual, it could record for 6 hours before needing to be recharged. The next morning, while Jason was out for his run, I positioned the camera on the bookshelf in the living room. I angled it carefully to capture the coffee table where we always had our afternoon tea, then concealed it between 2 large hardcover books. The lens peeked out just enough to record clearly without being obvious. Then I waited. When Jason returned, I was sitting in my armchair, staring vacantly at a magazine I'd already read twice. "What are you reading, Mom?" he asked, coming in from his shower, hair still damp. I looked down at the magazine as if surprised to find it in my hands. "Oh, just catching up on, you know." I waved vaguely at the pages. "The magazine's upside down," he said gently. I blinked at it. "Oh, so it is," I laughed weakly. Silly me. He smiled, that same smile he'd given me since childhood when he wanted something. "I'll make us some tea after lunch, okay?" My heart quickened, but I kept my expression placid. "That would be lovely, dear." After a light lunch of soup and sandwiches, Jason disappeared into the kitchen. I positioned myself on the sofa, directly in view of the hidden camera. I could hear the kettle whistling, the clink of spoons against ceramic. When he returned, he carried 2 steaming mugs. Mine, I noticed, was slightly darker than his. "Here you go," he said, setting mine down on the coffee table. "Careful, it's hot." "Thank you, dear." I watched as he settled into the armchair across from me, sipping from his own mug. My tea sat untouched. "Aren't you going to drink it?" he asked after a moment. "It'll get cold." "In a minute," I said. "It's too hot right now." He nodded, but his eyes kept darting to my mug. Finally, I picked it up, brought it to my lips, and pretended to take a small sip. I murmured. "Perfect." His shoulders relaxed. We chatted about nothing important, the weather, a show he'd been watching, while I periodically lifted the mug to my lips without actually drinking. Eventually, I excused myself to the bathroom, where I poured the entire contents down the toilet. When I returned, I made a show of yawning widely. "I think I need to lie down," I said, my voice deliberately slurring, feeling a bit woozy. Jason leapt up to help me. "Let me get you to bed, Mom." No, I protested weakly. "Just need to rest my eyes a bit." I settled back onto the sofa and closed my eyes, breathing deeply as if drifting off. Through my lashes, I watched Jason collect the mugs and return to the kitchen. Only when I heard him go upstairs did I finally move. That evening after dinner, I feigned exhaustion and retired early. Once in my room, I retrieved the camera with shaking hands and connected it to my husband's old laptop. The footage was crystal clear. There was Jason, entering the frame with 2 mugs. He set them down on the coffee table, glanced over his shoulder toward the kitchen, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small vial and tapped white powder into my tea, stirring it quickly until it dissolved. Undeniable, irrefutable. My son, methodically poisoning me. I rewound and watched it again, my throat tightening with each viewing. The casual way he did it, like adding sugar to a friend's coffee, made my stomach turn. How many times had he done this, How close had I come to real damage? I saved the video to a USB drive, then made a copy. One for Arlene, one for the police. The time for playing confused was over. I woke early the next morning before Jason stirred. My mind was clear, focused in a way it hadn't been since finding that insurance policy. The video evidence burned in my pocket, a small USB drive that now held the power to save my life. I dressed quietly, choosing comfortable clothes and sensible shoes. My hands trembled slightly as I applied a touch of lipstick, not for vanity, but for armor. I needed to look put together, coherent. Not like the confused old woman my son was trying to make me into. Jason's bedroom door remained closed as I crept downstairs. I left a note on the kitchen counter, gone for a walk, back by lunch. Then I slipped out the front door into the cool morning air. The bus ride to Arlene's shop took 20 minutes. I clutched my purse tightly against my chest, feeling the weight of the USB drive and the folder of documents I'd collected. Evidence of my own son's betrayal. "You look like hell," Arlene said when I walked in. The bell above her pawn shop door had barely finished jingling. "I feel worse," I admitted, "but I've got what we need." She flipped the sign to closed and locked the door behind me. "Show me." I spread everything across her cluttered back office desk. The insurance policy, the copies of forged documents, Jason's notebook with its clinical observations of my symptoms, and finally, the USB drive. "This is it," I said, tapping the small plastic rectangle. Caught him red-handed. Arlene plugged it into her computer, and we both watched in silence as Jason poisoned my tea. Her face hardened with each passing second. "That little snake," she muttered. "Your Harold always said that boy had something off about him." I flinched at the mention of my late husband. Harold wasn't perfect, but he saw through Jason's charm. I should have listened. "No use in that talk now," Arlene said firmly. "What matters is what we do next." She tapped a finger against the insurance document. "You need to call them. Today." My stomach knotted. "And say what? That my son is trying to kill me for the money?" "Not in those words, no. You need to be smart about this, careful." She was right. I nodded and reached for her phone. Finding the right number took some time. The policy paperwork had multiple contact options. Finally, I reached the fraud department. A woman with a pleasant professional voice answered. "Integrity Life Insurance, Fraud Prevention. How may I help you?" I took a deep breath. "My name is Margaret Thompson," I began, using the calm, measured tone I'd perfected during 40 years of teaching. "I'm calling about a policy that appears to be in my name, but I'm concerned about its legitimacy." "Can you provide the policy number, Mrs. Thompson?" I read it from the document. There was typing on the other end. "Yes, I see that policy. It was initiated approximately 1 month ago. Is there a specific concern you have?" I chose my words carefully. "I believe I may have signed something without fully understanding what it was. My son, he manages a lot of my paperwork these days." I paused. "But I've recently discovered this policy, and I have no memory of agreeing to such a large amount." More typing. "I understand. And you're saying you didn't knowingly apply for this life insurance policy?" "That's correct, and there's more." I swallowed hard. "I have video evidence that my son has been administering medication without my knowledge or consent." The representative's tone changed immediately. "Mrs. Thompson, are you currently in a safe location?" "Yes," I assured her. "I'm with a trusted family friend." "Good. This is a very serious allegation. We would need to see all documentation related to this policy, including the video you mentioned, and we'll need you to file a formal fraud report. I can do that, I said, my voice stronger now. I have everything with me. She explained the process. I would need to submit the evidence, complete their fraud report forms, and possibly speak with their investigation team. They would also likely involve law enforcement. How quickly can this be addressed, I asked, thinking of the clinic appointment Jason had scheduled. I'm concerned about my immediate safety. We can expedite fraud cases when there's potential endangerment, she assured me. If you can submit everything today, we can begin the investigation immediately. After hanging up, I looked at Arlene. They need everything. Today. She was already moving, pulling forms from her printer. Then let's get to work. For the next 2 hours, we organized every piece of evidence. Arlene helped me complete the fraud report forms, her practical nurse's handwriting much clearer than my shaky script. We made copies of everything: the forged forms, Jason's disturbing notebook, the clinic appointment. We need to document the testing strips too, Arlene said, placing the used strips in a small evidence bag. These prove the barbiturates were in your tea. By noon, we had assembled a comprehensive file. The insurance representative had emailed a secure link where we could upload the video and scan documents. Arlene helped me through the technical process, her weathered hands steady on the keyboard. There, she said finally, hitting the submit button. It's done. I stared at the confirmation screen, a strange mix of relief and heartbreak washing over me. I had just officially accused my only child of attempting to murder me for insurance money. What happens now? I whispered. Now, Arlene said, placing a firm hand on my shoulder, we wait for them to contact us. But not for long. That woman said they'd expedite it. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the morning was fading, leaving me hollow. He's my son, Arlene, I said, my voice breaking. My little boy. Her eyes softened slightly, but her jaw remained set. No, honey, your little boy is gone. Has been for a long time. That man in your house, he's just someone who looks like him. I knew she was right. The evidence spread across her desk told the undeniable truth. My son had betrayed me in the most profound way possible. You can stay with me tonight if you want, Arlene offered. I shook my head. Number, I need to go home. Act normal until we hear from the insurance company. I gathered my purse. Besides, if I disappear now, he might get suspicious and destroy more evidence. At least take this, she said, pressing something into my hand. It was a small emergency button on a cord. Wear it under your clothes. One press, and it calls 911. I slipped it around my neck and tucked it beneath my blouse, feeling its weight against my skin. Thank you. And call me tonight, she insisted. Let me know you're okay. I promised I would, then headed for the bus stop. The fraud report was filed, the evidence submitted. Now came the hardest part, going home to face my son, knowing what I knew and pretending that everything was normal. The week after filing the fraud report dragged by. I kept Arlene's emergency button under my nightgown at night and beneath my cardigan during the day. When Jason brought food or tea, I'd smile, accept it, then discard it when he wasn't looking. Tuesday morning, my rotary phone rang. I answered before Jason could. Mrs. Thompson, Meredith Calloway from Alliance Insurance. I'm calling about your case. I checked the hallway was clear. Yes, I whispered. We've started a formal investigation based on your evidence. It's high priority, and we're working with authorities." Her tone softened. "Are you safe there?" I touched the button through my sweater. For now, what's next? Investigators need to build their case. Given your evidence, especially the video, they're moving quickly. Is there somewhere else you could stay? I considered Arlene's offer. Yes, but leaving suddenly might make him suspicious. He could destroy evidence or disappear. I understand. Be careful. We'll be in touch soon. After hanging up, I stared at the maple tree my husband and I had planted. How had this happened with my only child? As days passed, Jason changed. His charm cracked. He paced while on hushed phone calls, ending them when I entered. His smile strained, eyes searching my face. By Thursday, he snapped when I asked about dinner time. "How should I know?" "That's your job." Then softening. "Sorry, Mom. Work stress." What work? His real estate ventures hadn't earned money in years. "You're acting off lately," he said that evening. "Maybe we should move up that doctor's appointment." I felt chilled. "I'm fine, just tired." "You seem different," he pressed, more alert. I feigned confusion and yawned. "I don't feel different. Think I'll nap now." In my room, I left the door cracked to hear him. Soon his phone rang. "It's not working. She's not showing symptoms anymore," he whispered urgently. "Yes, I'm still giving it to her, but she's more lucid, not less." My blood ran cold. "We might need Plan B. The policy's contestability period ends in 2 weeks." Pause. "I can handle it. Just have the paperwork ready." Plan B sounded like a death sentence. That night, I called Arlene from the bathroom with the shower running. "He's getting desperate, talking about Plan B. The insurance company's working with police, but I don't know how much longer I can stay." "Come stay with me tonight," Arlene insisted. "I can't just leave. He'll know something's wrong." "Margaret, this isn't about catching him anymore. It's about keeping you alive." I promised to consider it, knowing she was right. The next evening, headlights swept across our windows. Jason froze. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked innocently. He peered outside, tensing. "Go to your room, Mom." "Why? Who is it?" "Just go," he snapped, then forced a smile. "Please." I dried my hands slowly. The doorbell rang. Jason looked ill. "I'll get it," I said. "No," he blocked me. "I'll handle it." The bell rang again, followed by knocks. "Police, open up!" Jason paled, eyeing me suspiciously. "What did you do?" I met his gaze. "Nothing. Why don't you answer it?" He gripped my wrist painfully. "What did you do?" Another knock. "Mr. Thompson, Officer Ramirez, we need to speak with you." Jason released me, straightened himself, and opened the door with a practiced smile. 2 officers stood outside, a tall woman and a broad-shouldered man. "Jason Thompson?" the female officer asked. "Yes. How can I help you?" "I'm Officer Ramirez. This is Officer Chen. We have questions about an insurance policy in Margaret Thompson's name." Jason's smile remained, but his grip on the doorframe tightened. "There must be a mistake." "We have a warrant to search these premises," Officer Chen said. "You need to come with us." "This is ridiculous," Jason laughed hollowly. "Mom, tell them this is a misunderstanding." All eyes turned to me. "Officers," I said quietly, I never authorized any life insurance policy. Jason's face contorted. You lying old. He caught himself. Mom's confused. Early dementia. Mr. Thompson, step outside, Ramirez ordered. I'm not going anywhere. This is my house. Actually, I said firmly, it's my house, and I want you to go with them. Jason Thompson, you're under arrest for insurance fraud and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. As they read his rights, Jason's mask slipped. You stupid old woman, I was trying to help you. You would have gone peacefully in your sleep. Officer Ramirez stepped between us. That's enough. Watching them lead my handcuffed son away, I felt hollow but peaceful. It was over. I was safe. I stood at the kitchen window watching as they guided Jason into the back of the police car. My hands trembled against the countertop, and I had to lean forward to steady myself. The familiar weight of my wedding ring pressed against the cool surface, the one constant in a world suddenly turned upside down. That's my son, I whispered to no one, my little boy. The police cruiser's lights flashed silently, painting my kitchen walls in alternating red and blue. I remembered those same colors from the toy police car Jason had loved as a child, how he'd zoom it across the living room floor, making siren noises with his mouth. Now he sat in a real one, head down, shoulders hunched. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Was this relief I was feeling? Grief? Both crashed through me in waves, leaving me dizzy and breathless. I'd survived, but at what cost? The car pulled away from the curb, taking my only child with it. I sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly aware of the profound silence in the house. No Jason pacing in the next room, no tea kettle whistling, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and my own ragged breathing. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in thought, before the phone rang. I flinched at the sound, then forced myself to answer. Did they come? Arlene's voice was sharp, urgent. Yes. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. They took him away in handcuffs. Good. The single word held such fierce satisfaction that I almost smiled despite everything. Are you alone? Do you want me to come over? No, I paused, realizing I didn't know what I wanted. I think I need some time. I understand, but turn on your TV, Channel 5. They're already reporting it. After hanging up, I moved to the living room in a daze and switched on the television. Sure enough, there was Jason's face, not the smiling son I'd raised, but a harsh mugshot, eyes cold and defiant. The headline below read, Local man arrested for insurance fraud and elder abuse. The anchor's voice filled my living room. Police arrested 42-year-old Jason Thompson today on multiple charges including insurance fraud, elder abuse, and attempted murder. Sources say Thompson allegedly forged his mother's signature on a life insurance policy worth over $1 million and was slowly poisoning her with sedatives. I muted the sound, unable to bear hearing the details of my own life narrated back to me like some crime drama. There was my house in the background of their footage, my carefully tended roses visible in the front yard. Our private horror, now public spectacle. The phone rang again. This time it was a reporter asking for comment. I hung up without speaking. Then another call, and another. I finally unplugged the phone, wrapping my arms around myself as if I could physically hold my breaking heart together. When darkness fell, I drew the curtains against the occasional car that drove by slowly. Curiosity seekers, no doubt. I made myself a cup of tea, real tea, safe tea, and nearly broke down at the simple pleasure of drinking without fear. The phone on the wall started ringing again around 9 o'clock. I'd plugged it back in, worried that Arlene might need to reach me. This time when I answered, her voice came through triumphant. "They raided the clinic too," she announced without preamble. "Just saw it on the news. That quack doctor and his nurse were hauled out in cuffs. Apparently, they've been helping people expedite inheritances for years." "Oh my God," I whispered, sinking into a chair. The clinic. I'd almost forgotten about that final piece of Jason's plan. "They found records, Margaret. Detailed plans for your care. That appointment wasn't for a wellness check, it was..." Her voice trailed off. "For my end," I finished quietly. The words hung in the air between us. "Yes." A pause. "Are you okay? Really okay?" Was I? Relief washed over me in waves so powerful they left me lightheaded. I was alive. I would stay alive. The nightmare was over. And yet, "He's my son, Arlene," I said, my voice breaking. "My little boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers. The baby I rocked to sleep. The teenager I taught to drive." Tears spilled down my cheeks. How did we end up here? Arlene was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, honey. Some people just turn, no matter how well you raise them." After we hung up, I wandered through the house, touching familiar objects as if to reassure myself they were real. In Jason's room, I stood in the doorway, unable to make myself step inside. This morning he'd been here, plotting my death. Tonight, he was in a jail cell. The overwhelming sorrow hit me then, not just for myself, but for all the moments I'd never have. I'd never see Jason graduate from college, though at 42 that ship had probably sailed. I'd never dance at his wedding, never hold his children, never share another Christmas morning. My son was gone, not in the way I'd feared when I first discovered his betrayal, but gone nonetheless. Not to school, not to marriage, not to fatherhood, but to prison, for trying to kill me. I sank to my knees in the hallway, great heaving sobs tearing through me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself feel everything: the terror, the betrayal, the grief, the relief. I cried for the little boy with the gap-toothed smile who once promised to take care of me when I got old. I cried for the man who had twisted that promise into something unrecognizable. And I cried for myself, for surviving, for fighting back, for winning a battle I never wanted to fight. When the tears finally subsided, I made my way to bed, exhausted beyond words. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more reporters, more painful revelations, but tonight I was safe in my own home. The tea in my cup was just tea, and despite everything, I was still here. I was still here. The morning after Jason's arrest, I woke to the insistent ringing of my doorbell. Pulling back the curtain just enough to peek through, I spotted a woman in a crisp blazer clutching a microphone, a cameraman hovering behind her. I stepped back quickly, heart hammering against my ribs. "Mrs. Winters, Diane Holloway from Channel 8 News. We'd like to get your statement about your son's arrest." I pressed my back against the wall, waiting for them to leave. They didn't. The doorbell rang again, followed by knocking. "Mrs. Winters, just a few questions, please." My phone started ringing too, the landline I'd plugged back in last night. I let it go to voicemail, listening as a man's voice filled the room. "This is Robert Chen from the Daily Chronicle. I'm hoping to speak with Margaret Winters regarding the recent arrest." I unplugged the phone again with shaking hands. How many more would call? How many would show up at my door? The thought of cameras capturing my grief, my shame, my relief, all those tangled emotions laid bare for strangers to dissect over their morning coffee, made me physically ill. Number, they couldn't have this part of me. They already had Jason's mugshot, the police report, the sensational headlines. They didn't need my tears, too. I waited until the news crew finally gave up and left before I made myself a cup of coffee. As I sat at my kitchen table, I realized something with sudden clarity. I couldn't stay here. This house, once my sanctuary, my home for 38 years, now felt contaminated. The kitchen where Jason had prepared my poisoned tea, the living room where he'd watched me drink it, the hallway where I'd eavesdropped on his Plan B phone call. Every corner held memories that were either tainted or painful. I picked up the phone and called Arlene. "I need to move," I said without preamble when she answered. "Where to?" she asked, not missing a beat. That was Arlene, practical to her core. "I don't know yet, just not here." "You can stay with me until you figure it out," she offered. "Thank you." I felt tears threatening again. But first, I need to pack. I spent the next 3 days in a frenzy of sorting and boxing. The reporters continued their siege. Business cards slipped under my door, messages on my voicemail when I dared to plug the phone back in, even a fruit basket from one particularly persistent journalist with a note asking for just 15 minutes of your time. I ignored them all. Every box I packed felt like dismantling a life, mine and Jason's together, the framed photos of him growing up, the Mother's Day cards, the clay handprint he'd made in kindergarten. I couldn't bear to throw these things away, but I couldn't look at them either. I wrapped them carefully and labeled the box, storage. Jason's room was the hardest. I stood in the doorway for nearly an hour before I could make myself step inside. It still smelled like him, that familiar mix of aftershave and laundry detergent. His bed was unmade, a coffee mug on the nightstand. A novel lay open, face down on his pillow. And somewhere in this ordinary-looking room, he had plotted my death. I couldn't do it. Couldn't touch his things. Couldn't sort through the mundane items that now seemed sinister by association. In the end, I closed the door, locked it, and taped a note to the wood. Leave as is. The movers would understand. On the 4th day, I called a moving company. They could come tomorrow, they said. I'd have to pay extra for the rush job. That's fine, I told them, my voice steady. Money wasn't an issue, not anymore. The insurance company had already assured me they were invalidating the fraudulent policy and investigating whether Jason had taken out others. And my own finances, which Jason had been slowly draining, were now secure again. That night, I sat alone in my half-empty living room, surrounded by boxes labeled kitchen and linens and books. It struck me then that I was 70 years old and starting over. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something like freedom stirring beneath my grief. The movers arrived early the next morning, 2 burly men who called me ma'am and worked efficiently, carrying out furniture and stacking boxes in their truck. I directed them with a calm I didn't entirely feel, pointing out what went and what stayed. The last thing I packed was the ceramic teacup, the one that had held Jason's poisoned brew, the one I'd tested with Arlene's strip. I'd scrubbed it clean days ago, but still hesitated before touching it. Why was I keeping it? As evidence? As a reminder? Perhaps both. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and nestled it into my suitcase, right on top. Arlene arrived just as the movers were loading the last few boxes. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes taking in my pale face and trembling hands. "Almost," I said. She nodded and stood silently beside me, a solid presence as I watched strangers carry away the physical remnants of my life. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? That my son had tried to kill me, that I'd survived, that I was leaving behind the house where I'd raised him, loved him, nearly died by his hand. When the truck was fully loaded, one of the movers approached with a clipboard. "Just need your signature, Mrs. Winters, and we'll meet you at the new storage facility." I signed my name, Margaret Winters, not Mom, not victim, just me, and handed back the clipboard. "That's everything," the mover said, glancing around the nearly empty house. No, I thought, not everything, not Jason's childhood, not my marriage, not the decades of love and hope and dreams that had filled these rooms. Those things couldn't be packed in boxes or loaded onto trucks. They would stay here, ghosts in an empty house. I took one last look around, then picked up my suitcase, the one with the teacup nestled inside, and walked toward the front door. Arlene followed, her footsteps echoing on the bare floors. At the threshold, I paused, my hand on the doorknob. This was it, the final moment in the house that had witnessed both my greatest joys and my deepest betrayal. I stepped into my new condo, sunlight streaming through large windows that faced east. The real estate agent had emphasized this feature when showing me the place. "Morning light, Mrs. Winters. It'll wake you gently." I hadn't told her that gentle awakenings were exactly what I needed after months of waking in terror, wondering if today would be the day Jason's plan succeeded. The moving men had already delivered my essentials and arranged the furniture according to my instructions. My familiar sofa sat beneath those glorious windows, and my reading chair was positioned just so, angled to catch the light but not the glare. The kitchen gleamed with clean countertops and new appliances I hadn't yet learned to use. "It's perfect," I whispered to no one. The sound of my voice seemed to bounce off the freshly painted walls, reminding me I was alone, truly alone for the first time in decades. I'd chosen this place specifically for its distance from my old life, across town, but not so far that Arlene couldn't visit. The condo complex was quiet, populated mostly by other retirees who nodded politely in the hallways, but didn't press for details about my sudden appearance. The anonymity was a balm after the whispers and sidelong glances that had followed Jason's arrest. The park across the street sealed the deal for me. From my living room, I could see children playing, dogs chasing balls, couples walking hand in hand, normal life continuing, undisturbed by the darkness I'd escaped. Sometimes I'd stand at the window for an hour, just watching, reminding myself that the world was still full of ordinary joys. I unpacked slowly over the next few days. There was no rush now, no ticking clock, no looming deadline, no 90-day contestability period hanging over my head like a guillotine blade. I savored the simple pleasure of deciding where each item should go, of creating order from chaos, of making this space truly mine. The yellow curtains were my first indulgence. I'd spotted them in a catalog during those awful weeks when I was pretending to be confused and weakening, playing the role Jason expected of me while secretly gathering evidence. The cheery fabric had seemed like a promise then. If I survived this, if I escaped, I would hang yellow curtains in my new home. Now they fluttered in the breeze from the open windows, keeping their promise. "What do you think?" I asked my late husband's photograph as I placed it on the mantel. "Too bright?" I could almost hear George's chuckle, see the crinkles around his eyes. He'd always teased me about my sunny disposition, even when life had been at its hardest. What would he say now, knowing what our son had done? The thought made my chest tighten. I continued unpacking, box by methodical box. My books found their places on shelves. My clothes hung in the closet, each item familiar yet somehow new in these surroundings. I'd left behind anything that reminded me too strongly of Jason. The sweater I'd worn the day of his high school graduation, the mug he'd given me one Mother's Day, the family albums I couldn't bear to look at. The teacup, though, that I kept. I unwrapped it from its tissue paper nest and placed it on a high shelf in my kitchen, visible but out of reach. A reminder, not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd survived. On the 5th day in my new home, the doorbell rang. I tensed, an old reflex now, before reminding myself that Jason was in jail awaiting trial. The preliminary hearing had been last week. The evidence was overwhelming. He wasn't getting out anytime soon. It was just the mail carrier, holding a certified letter that required my signature. I thanked him, closed the door, and examined the envelope. The insurance company's logo stared back at me. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a formal letter on heavy letterhead. Dear Mrs. Winters, this correspondence serves as final confirmation that policy JW-78293-L has been permanently voided due to documented fraud. Our investigation has concluded that the application was falsified, signatures were forged, and the policy was obtained under demonstrably fraudulent circumstances. All premiums paid have been forwarded to the relevant authorities as evidence in the ongoing criminal case. No benefits will be paid under this policy, and the matter is now considered closed by our fraud investigation unit. We thank you for your cooperation throughout this difficult process. I read the letter twice, then a third time, letting each word sink in. Final confirmation. Permanently voided. Matter is now considered closed. It was over. Really, truly over. I sank onto my new sofa, letter clutched to my chest, and let out a breath I felt I'd been holding for months. The insurance company had been the last loose end. With their investigation complete and the policy officially void, Jason's plan had failed completely. He'd gambled everything, our relationship, his freedom, my life, and lost it all. The sunlight caught the yellow curtains, making them glow like liquid gold. Outside, children laughed in the park, a dog barked. Someone's wind chimes tinkled in the breeze. I was safe, finally, completely safe. I set the letter on my coffee table and walked to the kitchen. The afternoon stretched before me, quiet and unhurried. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, then reached for a mug, not the teacup on the high shelf, but a new one I'd bought just yesterday. It was sturdy ceramic, painted with small yellow flowers that matched my curtains. As I waited for the water to boil, I leaned against the counter and gazed out at my new view. The park was filling with after-school visitors, mothers pushing strollers, teenagers on skateboards, elderly couples on afternoon walks. Normal life, my life now. The kettle whistled and I prepared my tea, Earl Grey, my favorite, the one Jason had first tried to poison. I took a long, satisfying sip, savoring the familiar taste that now carried no hint of fear. I woke before dawn the next morning, my eyes opening to darkness. For a moment, that old panic fluttered in my chest, that disorienting fear that had become my constant companion in those final weeks at the old house. But then I felt the softness of my new sheets, saw the unfamiliar shadows of my condo bedroom, and remembered I was safe here. No one was watching me sleep, measuring my breaths, planning my demise. I slid out from under the covers and placed my bare feet on the floor. No slippers needed. I'd splurged on radiant heating when I bought the place. The warmth rose through my soles, a small luxury that felt enormous after everything I'd been through. Just walking across my own floors, feeling their gentle heat, reminded me that this space was truly mine. I padded to the kitchen, not bothering with lights. The pre-dawn glow filtering through the windows was enough. My movements were unhurried, deliberate. No need to rush, no need to hide. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, then reached for the canister of loose tea I'd bought at that little shop downtown. Not Earl Grey this time, but a strong black breakfast blend, rich and malty, with hints of dark chocolate and stone fruit. While the water heated, I leaned against the counter and gazed out the window. The sky was just beginning to lighten, a soft gradient of navy to periwinkle. A few stars still twinkled, stubborn against the coming day. Below, the park lay quiet and still, waiting for morning joggers and dog walkers to bring it to life. The kettle's whistle pulled me from my thoughts. I warmed the teapot first, a proper ceramic one, not the flimsy metal thing Jason had insisted was more modern. Then I measured the leaves, dark and fragrant, into the infuser. The scent rose with the steam, earthy, complex, honest. 4 minutes. I watched the second hand on my kitchen clock make its rounds. No shortcuts, no rush. Good tea deserves patience. Good lives, too. When the timer chimed, I poured the amber liquid into my favorite mug, the one with tiny painted bluebells that Arlene had given me as a housewarming gift. For new beginnings, she'd said, pressing it into my hands. Dear Arlene, who'd believed me when no one else might have, who'd helped me gather evidence and courage in equal measure. Cup in hand, I moved to the living room and settled into the armchair by the window. My reading glasses sat on the side table, alongside a new mystery novel I'd been too tired to start last night. But reading could wait. This moment, just sitting, just being, felt too precious to dilute with someone else's words. I took my first sip. The tea was perfect, full-bodied and strong, with just enough astringency to wake my senses, but not so much as to pucker my mouth. I closed my eyes, letting the flavor spread across my tongue. No metallic undertones, no bitter chemical aftertaste. Just tea, pure and simple. Tea that I had chosen, brewed, and served to myself. When I opened my eyes again, the sky had lightened further. The horizon glowed golden pink, the sun still hidden, but announcing its arrival. My yellow curtains, the ones I dreamed about during those dark days, caught the early light and seemed to glow from within, transforming from fabric to liquid sunshine. I watched the sun rise, sip by careful sip. First a sliver, then a semicircle, then a full, brilliant orb climbing steadily into the morning sky. Light spilled across the park, catching dewdrops on grass blades and turning them to diamonds. A jogger appeared on the path below, breath visible in the cool morning air. A squirrel darted up an oak tree. The world woke up, one creature, one ray of light at a time. And I was here to see it, here, alive, whole. A strange thought occurred to me then, so sudden and clear it nearly took my breath away. I didn't miss Jason. Not the real Jason, the one who had measured barbiturates into my tea, who had forged my signature on life insurance policies, who had planned my death with the methodical precision of a surgeon. That Jason deserved no grief, no longing. But I did miss who I'd thought he was. I missed the little boy who'd brought me dandelion bouquets, the teenager who'd stayed up late, helping me address Christmas cards the year after George died, the young man who'd promised to always take care of me. I missed the son I'd believed in, had sacrificed for, had loved without reservation or condition. That son had never existed. He'd been a mirage, a performance, perhaps even a deliberate deception from the very beginning. And yet the love I'd felt had been real as the sunrise now warming my face through the window glass. I took another sip of tea, now cooled to the perfect drinking temperature. The fullness of the flavor seemed to match the fullness I felt spreading through my chest. Not happiness exactly, too soon for that, but something quieter and more durable. Peace, perhaps, or vindication. The knowledge that I had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged not just alive, but somehow more myself than before. The mug warmed my hands as I held it, this simple vessel that contained so much more than tea. It held my choices, my autonomy, my trust in myself restored. No one had prepared this drink but me. No one had decided what I should consume, when I should sleep, how I should live. Those decisions were mine again, had always been mine, would always be mine. I finished the last swallow as the sun cleared the horizon completely, bright and undeniable in a cloudless blue sky. My tea was gone, but I remained by the window, barefoot on my warm floors, watching the day unfold before me. My day, my life. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt whole.